Welcome and thank you for joining me. My name is Scott Hale and I'm the Director of Consulting Services here at Imagine Technologies, and I'd like to spend the next few minutes talking to you about a basic principle that I discovered quite a while ago called the 450 rule, and I think it can have a significant impact on your process improvement strategy. The first thing I like to do is kind of set the record straight and say that I'm a firm believer that technology alone is just the tip of the iceberg. By acquiring new technology, you're not going to guarantee yourself process improvement or increased productivity. You really need to take a step back and look beyond the technology itself that you've acquired, and you need to look at the processes that you're using day in and day out. That's where the keys to productivity lie. The next point I want to share is really something that I've seen in study after study, and certainly something that I've seen as I've worked with really hundreds of customers around the country. And that is that up to 50% of an engineer's or designer's time is focused on non-value added tasks. These are things like searching for information, entering data into multiple systems on a repetitive basis, working and collaborating with various different departments, both inside of the company and outside of the company. All tasks not related to new project creation or product design. I'm pointing this out because this is the first great example of a piece of the workflow that really is creating a bottleneck within an engineering department. So I'm going to move along and talk about the 450 rule. What is it? Really, the 450 rule is a premise that contradicts a lot of popular philosophies. As I've worked with customers over the years, over and over I'll hear that there's a belief that the issues that they have in their workflows is equally dispersed. They have problems in many areas, and it's hard to decide where to begin when you're solving the problem. But in reality, research shows that just 4% of that workflow, your engineering, your design process, is creating up to 50% of the inefficiencies. So if you can look at your process, take the time, take a step back, figure out where your 4% of that process lies that truly is generating the biggest portion of the bottlenecks, you can see the greatest amount of productivity increased by resolving and eliminating that particular aspect. So where do you start? Well, your first priority is really to take a look at the whole process, not just engineering, from sales all the way through engineering to order processing and out to the shop. You got to take a look at it all, measure, evaluate it if you want to make changes. As I've worked with clients over the years, I've been able to break down these workflows into a few basic groups. The first area to examine and really spend some time on is that upfront pre-sales area, that collaboration between clients and sales and engineering. We've found a number of key areas that we've been able to identify for customers that represent their 4% in many cases. Certainly related to communication challenges, visualization challenges, the ability to get quotes back and turn around sales drawings. All can significantly impact your productivity. Then we move on to engineering itself. Once we've got an order, there's a lot of things that can amount to that 4% in your process there. Re-entering information over and over again. Manual calculations that have to be done in order to complete a project, yet take a lot of time. Generation of bill of materials, and obviously throughput through the engineering environment. Everybody's challenged with getting more work done with fewer employees now that we're kind of coming out of this recession. The last piece is what happens after engineering, downstream collaboration, sharing drawings with the shop, communicating with CAM or FEA systems, and certainly integration with downstream ERP systems, scheduling, things like that, where we're trying to leverage data over and over again and not have to do those repetitive entries. All these things we've seen have shown to be that 4% for different customers along the way. Each client is a little bit different. If you can identify where you're at within these processes, that's step number one. So now that I've shared with you kind of the breakdown in that review of the workflows, I want to make sure I share with you a few examples of customers we've worked with where we analyzed their process, identified that 4% that could make the biggest impact, and developed a solution to solve the problem for them. First one I'll talk about is Belvac. They're a heavy machinery manufacturer for the canning industry. They had a significant problem, even though that they had gone to 3D, related to the engineering design for a constant velocity path that a can would follow as it's being formed throughout their machinery. Very complicated, took a lot of time. One person could do it, was capable of doing it, but it took them over 5 days, sometimes as much as 7 days, to get this process completed. By identifying that as that 4% that had to be improved, we were able to develop a new rules-based design process that they could use in engineering. Any member of their team could perform it, could utilize the tools we delivered, and it took them about 5 hours to do what used to take 5 days. Significant ROI and productivity improvement. The next example I want to look at is for a company called Concealment. They had a little bit more complicated requests and requirements. A lot of it was up front. They had to turn around proposals quick. They had a complex collaboration process between the customer and sales and engineering, and they had to get engineering out of the proposal phase as much as possible so they could stay focused on engineering. We worked with them to develop a custom application that worked off of one common database, had a web interface for sales to use, had a common database that sales, estimating, and engineering all used. In the end, we shortened that entire process to go through the sales process to the time that the order comes in, but tenfold. They quoted back to us that it's about 10 times faster than it used to be with their old 3D process. And the last example I want to show you is for a company called Dadanco. They make HVAC solutions for the commercial building industries, and it was taking them, again, several days, 2 to 3 days, to create unique, one-of-a-kind configurations of their induction unit machinery. Each one of these systems could have 500 to 600 different variations that it could be configured into. It just took a long time to update all 30 drawings in the drawing set. So we helped them create an iLogic based solution inside of Inventor so that from a little VB dialog box they could select the options that were pertinent, they could decide the sizes, attachments, things like that, and effectively take what used to be a 2-day process and do it in about 30 minutes and still get the same documentation out the back end. So all these are examples of what can be done once you've identified your 4%, that 4% that's causing the biggest bottleneck and the biggest inefficiencies within the workflow. Your homework now, when you get back to the office after Autodesk University, is to identify your 4% and figure out what we need to address. Once you've done that, I guarantee we can create a solution that will show you some dramatic results, and Imaginate Technologies can help in the process. Thank you very much. Now get going on your homework.